There we go. So, let's try this. It's been a long time since I've tried this, but one of the things that I like to do is I find that in the education world, it's interesting when you can actually entertain people as well. So I tried this experiment back when I was in Vietnam. So let's see if it will work just as well virtually as it will in person. So if everyone wants to join in with me on this, I'm actually going to stop my share screen so you can see everyone. If you want to turn on your videos for this, this makes it extra interesting. So I'll give you a few moments to turn on your video. And I'm going to ask you to go through some exercises with me and then see if you can catch and pick up on this magic trick. Great. Hello, Bev. Hello, Nancy. Nice banner behind you. Great. So we do have a few people on video. Feel free to come on video as well, the rest of you. Don't be shy. All right, so let's try this. So everyone, I want you to put both your hands in front of you. And I want you to turn your hands so that your palms are facing outwards. And I want you to cross one hand over the other, right? So make sure that your left hand is the one that's over your right hand. Right? So I want you to try and turn and see if you can separate your hands. Great. So I see some people getting confused. So the trick here, and I'll actually make sure I'll tell you the secret to it so that you won't be worrying about how exactly I do it throughout the whole presentation. So it's a fun party trick. You can try it with your friends. But the idea is what happens is you get them to put your hands out, they flip it around, and then you tell them to cross it. And then when you tell them to make sure your left hand is over your right hand, you're actually, while they're paying attention to your left hand, you're turning your right hand the other way so that you can flip it. Yeah, so that's the secret. Fun stuff. Thanks for playing along with that.
Thank you.
That's great.
Great, let's get back to it. So some housekeeping, you know, I like to try to make the sessions as engaging as possible. So feel free to chime in. If anyone has seen different things work in their own examples, in their own experiments for emails, feel free to share that as well. I like to try to create a safe environment for sharing as well. So if you see anyone doing something that is inappropriate, please call it out, no bullshitting, and please be as respectful as possible as well. We try to be as inclusive. So if anyone is you know, coming off mute to ask a question, if their English is not good, then you know, please bear with them for a bit. So yeah, I think that's basically it. Today, my name is Chin. I come from a background in sales. I spent the first few years after graduation working for a telecom company. So I used to work for a Bell dealership, and then after that, Win Mobile, which is now Freedom Mobile. And then after that, I ended up in the entrepreneurship world, where I joined Spring, which is a startup incubator accelerator. While I was at Spring, most of my work actually involved reaching out to both companies, but also investors. So I was actually doing a lot of different email campaigns, testing a lot of different things. And that's actually where I came to meet Will. So yeah, that's kind of my journey. And I've, you know, through that whole experience, let's see, if I'm thinking about the number of emails I've sent, probably over at least 10,000 emails. So yeah, I think there are some tips and tricks that I like to be able to share with you all today. And I think Will has a lot of interesting things to share as well. So Will, I'll pass it to you to do a quick intro of yourself.
Thank you, Jin. Thanks for having me. Yeah, we actually met, it's probably 4 years ago now. He was gracious enough to have us at Spring and teach me the early stages, kind of some of the growth tactics, and figure out how to find your market and what you're doing. My background's actually in finance. Worked in finance on Bay Street for a couple of years, and then went and started a web development school. And now I find myself in the world of sales because this is the thing that kept me up at night. So I'm happy to pass along these learnings with you guys.
Great. Do you want to give a few words about Growth Genius and what the company does?
Yeah, definitely. So Growth Genius helps B2B companies find or book sales meetings with their ideal customers. And it's all through outbound cold email and LinkedIn. And so your team can focus on closing deals instead of preparing, lists and writing copy and all of kind of the tedious aspects of the process.
Great. So maybe I forgot to include the community announcement slide. So I think I've noticed that in my last few workshops, I've been missing that out. But maybe before we move on with the presentation, maybe 30 seconds. If you want to come off mute, if you want to share anything interesting, feel free to do that right now. And I'll give you all some time. So anyone can just try and come off mute. Yeah.
Yeah, so we're having an event on thanking AI for helping us to be more humans and work like humans and not machines. So the event is about why we have to welcome AI, and if we don't do that, the AI will just welcome themselves to the workforce. So it's a free event. If you're interested about the future workforce and how technology is impacting that and how you can prepare for it, yeah, that's happening next Thursday. So I can share the link in the chat for those who are interested.
Great, thank you, Simon. Anyone else want to announce anything?
So I'm Rafael of the Global Startup School. We are always with you, Tim. Very nice events, of course. As I said, like we have entrepreneurs and the students are always searching for opportunities and partners also. They present a lot of their projects at Volition Pitch Nights, which is quite interesting. And something we are very interested in these events. If you could share with us like the link and any kinds of events that you have here, we are very interested in these events in entrepreneurship. Thank you very much.
Great. And while we're waiting for more people to come off and share, feel free to also post your LinkedIns in the chat to connect with other people as well.
Thanks.
Great. Anyone else want to announce anything? All right, going once, going twice. All right, we will move on. Quickly, I'm just going to pull this up. So what I normally do is for my workshops, it's by donation. So the workshops are free. And at the end, I ask for donations if you found that the program was valuable. And what I do is I donate part of the proceeds towards Universal Outreach Foundation. So the last workshop I received $40 from Beverly. So I'm actually just going to do a quick donation over here. Go. Wait for that to load. Forgetting my password. All right, and while that loads, let's move on. So today's key thing is I'll be walking through optimizing emails to ensure that they land in your inbox. We'll talk about email copy, we'll talk about list building. So we're actually breaking down the presentation in two parts. So I'm going to go first, and then Will will go after me. Most of our content will not overlap, but if I speak about anything interesting, if you think about anything while I'm presenting, feel free to come off mute and chime in as well.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Done. All right, so maybe quickly just for the crowd, I want to get a sense, what do you all think is the difference between sales and marketing emails? Feel free to type in the chat, feel free to come off mute. What's the biggest difference between sales and marketing emails? Sales is direct and explicit, and marketing is indirect and implicit. Could be. What do you mean by implicit or indirect?
Yeah, so I felt like marketing, it's like you're not saying, oh, this is what we exactly do, and you should meet for that purpose. You're sort of, oh, this is the interesting content that we have produced. It might be beneficial for you, so why don't you just check it out? But for sales, we like directly told them this is how sort of we've been helping our community, and yeah, so you're sort of being very sort of transparent that way. If that makes sense.
So it sounds like marketing emails almost feel a bit manipulative in a way, I guess. Is that kind of the
yeah, yeah, which I'm not the expert, so I'm here to learn, yeah, but that's my guess.
Cool. I think no wrong answers there. I think everyone has a different approach. In Natalie's case, sales tries to capture a direct transaction, and marketing is more trying to build a brand and establish credibility in the effort of a future sale. That's a possible way of putting it. Ritesh says to me, marketing creates brand awareness. Cool. And Ritesh is also mentioned sales is about driving through the funnel. So yeah, I think kind of spot on. The way I see it, and I don't know even if my way is the right way, but the way I view it is a lot of organizations view sales and marketing as two very separate things. I think they're actually very much related. There's a lot of overlap between sales and marketing. I like to think about marketing as kind of the front of the funnel, where it's more about exactly like Natalie mentioned, building that credibility, building that brand. And then from there, you're eventually transitioning over to more of a sales interaction. But I think there's actually a clear distinction on when you send sales emails. Although the line between marketing and sales as an effort is quite blurred, sales emails should only really be sent when you've actively identified prospects that are ready to convert. And marketing is more when you're trying to warm up your leads. Make sense? So the reason why I want to talk about that is because when you send out emails, there are usually two main ways of sending it out. So one is you send a direct email outreach from your own inbox, you're composing an email. And then of course you have marketing emails where you use some sort of mail client like MailChimp, ActiveCampaign, HubSpot, different tools like that. So I really want to quickly touch on this because when some people do sales emails, they actually send it as if they're sending a marketing email. And what you might notice is sometimes you notice that you have lower open rates, lower deliverability rates. And that's because of the way it's being sent. So what happens is if you look at most mailing clients, like I'm going to use MailChimp as an example here, they're usually sending emails on behalf of many, many companies. So what happens is they have their own servers, many companies connect to them, and then they send out to all the different recipients. And the challenge with that is what happens is, let's say recipient A over here marks one of companies A's emails as spam. What will happen is it's going to affect MailChimp servers. And when that happens, all of the other companies that are sending emails through MailChimp actually end up in this person, recipient A's spam or promotional folders. Make sense? So of course, there are ways that MailChimp will try to address the issue. So they switch their servers all the time. They make sure that not all emails are coming from the same IP, so that kind of avoids some of that. But what happens is eventually, if a lot of people start marking their servers as spam, then it's going to affect everyone. So, even though you are not being directly flagged as spam, that's how your emails end up actually getting in spam or promotional folders for other people's inboxes as well, because they are sending on behalf of other people. So you just have to be a bit mindful of how that works. So on a sales email framework, that's where you're actually sending more of a direct email. So I think Will is actually going to talk a bit more about how to set up your inbox the right way, but I'm going to talk a bit more on the copy side of things. So let's quickly kind of touch on the subject, and then we'll go into the copy of the email. So when I say copy is just anything in reference to text. So good subject lines, very simply, they're usually short, they're in some way personalized, and what you try to do with good subject lines is your only goal is to get them to open the email, right? So you want to try to be able to invoke curiosity in some way, or even ask a question. So I find those are usually the two best ways to get people to open up an email. I've seen other techniques where they talk about like, including bullet points, like top 3 things to do to win your clients or something like that. Those tend to sound a bit promotionally to me. So normally I find that those are more marketing-centric emails, but sales emails, I find that the best ones are usually when I'm asking the client a question or asking the prospect a question, or if I'm actually saying something, making a statement that actually invokes some level of curiosity. So that's a good subject line. Email copy. The key frameworks around email copy is, it's going to sound very logical, but a lot of people still make the mistake. So the shorter your email, the better. Because what happens is you notice that every time you get a long email in your inbox, regardless of what the email is about, even if it's someone that you know, the odds of you actually replying to your email drops drastically the longer the email gets. Because what happens is you read through the email and you think, I don't have the time to reply right now, or I don't want to think about it, maybe I'll come back to it later. So even if you intend on replying, the odds of you actually forgetting to reply actually goes up, right? So the shorter, the better. And you want to make sure that it's formatted in such a way where people can scan through the email quickly, especially if they're browsing on mobile. So making sure you use the right spacing, using bullet points. What you're seeing as well is, I strongly recommend plain text emails, because HTML emails are good for marketing. It makes things look a bit prettier. But usually if you're trying to ensure that the email actually lands in the inbox rather than a promotions folder, try to avoid using HTML emails. So plain text is as simple as possible. That way it doesn't get triggered by any spam filters or anything like that. Try to avoid jargon and try to write as if you're writing to someone that you know. I find that that's probably the hardest thing, and I do it myself as well. Every time you're writing email copy, what I actually like to do before I write my emails is I'll actually think about someone I want to write, and I'll write that email to that person. So before I even incorporate my merge tags, and I'll talk about merge tags in a bit, I'll actually say like, hey, Will. So I'll actually use the person's name. So all the conversation that comes out of it tends to be a bit more natural. Because what you'll find is if you don't do it that way, you tend to write in more of a third-person view, and it tends to become very distancing from your audience. And then the last piece is, sorry, Bill, do you have something to say?
I couldn't agree more with that. If you're not writing to a single person, it won't go very well. You have to think of this as a friend. I think one of the most interesting things we found was kind of lowercase, like conversational style writing, as if it were your best friend almost, gets a better reply because it invokes familiarity and a sense of casualness. The more salesy you are, the less people will reply. So just wanted to plus one that one.
Yep, I agree. And what's interesting here, and my last point here is, that what you want to try to do with sales emails is you want to end the email with a single ask. So I see some sales emails that come in my inbox where people are saying like, hey, check out our pricing page. Let me know if you want a quote or anything like that. And the more questions you ask, the more thinking it requires for someone to respond, the less likely they are to respond as well. So you want to try to keep the call to action to a single call to action. And usually my recommendation for a sales email is you want to bear in mind, there's this concept known as gradualization. So a lot of people jump too quickly to trying to make the sale. You're not trying to convert people into a customer, even if it's a sales email, within that single email, right? So it's usually there's something small that you want them to say yes to, and then what's the next thing up, right? So in some cases, it could be, I'd love to jump on a call. Do you want to book a meeting? Or if it's not that, maybe it's even like, do you have this problem? And if they say, yes, we do have this problem, then you can follow up with them and say, hey, you know what? Let's jump on a call. So you want to slowly escalate the conversation. So that's what it's called in sales. Make sense here? Yes, I will provide the access to slides. So I want to give you this quick framework that I've learned, and it's served me very well over the last 5 years. I read this email book from Ramit Sethi, and it's called 50 Proven Email Scripts. And he actually walks through this 4 email sequence. And I've actually seen it in play, and I've actually seen a big increase in response rates. Will, have you seen any sort of similar kind of follow-up email chain?
Yeah, lots of theories on this, but this seems to fall in line with everything that I've seen. Yeah, especially number 2. The whatever your subject line was in email 1, you go whatever your subject line was, and that's it. That's your most effective email.
Great. So I'll walk you all through this framework, and I'll kind of elaborate and actually show you examples of the emails as well. So email 1 is what we call the introduction of the ask email. Email 2 is the reminder. email tree is actually not an email. It's a different touch point. And then the last email is what we call the breakup email. And I've actually seen usually response rates will go from anywhere from 5% on the lower end to about 30%. But of course, if you write a good email, I usually get about 70–80% response rates in my first email. So yeah, it really depends on the situation. But if you follow this process correctly, you should get much better response rates. So in email number 1, your goal is permission. That's all. That's all you're trying to do. So you're not trying to sell them in the first email. So how you like to try to open it, and maybe I'll kind of take a step back. Before we think about even sales and marketing emails, this also applies to anything. So if you're looking to reach out to a mentor, if you're trying to reach out and find an investor, you can use this type of framework as well. Or maybe you want to interview someone because you want to get a job at your company, so you want to do an informational interview. This will also serve you very well. So what you do is you open the email by actually framing how you got to know them. So you might say, hey, John, I found you on LinkedIn because I was looking for companies that are in this, in the real estate space, for example. So you speak about how you know them. You want to praise them. So that's kind of the next follow-up. And praise here, the key is not to try to just flatter them. You actually want to be relevant and sincere in your praise. So this is where some level of homework and digging down will greatly help. I know it's not always possible for every single situation, but if you try to make it a bit more personalized, it'll be a lot more effective. So if, let's say, for example, you're reaching out to an investor, and in that case, the transaction value is a lot higher, then you might actually take the time to personalize a lot more. So you might say, hey, Mr. Investor, I see that you recently wrote a blog post about this article, and I really like your thoughts on whatever, right? So you can actually go into more detail if you want to. If it's a bit lighter, I'll show you an example later on how it still is slightly personalized, and but not too specific in a sense. So I'll actually walk through that. So after you praise them, then you want to actually introduce yourself. So you want to talk about who you are and why you're reaching out to them. And all of this really happens in about 2 paragraphs. So really, really short email. You're not going into too much detail. You're not telling them your life story. And then at the end, you ask for a response. So either you're trying to get a yes or no answer, or if you are trying to book a meeting, then there's this technique known as the wide narrow technique. And what the wide narrow technique is it's a technique to actually get people to easily set a time to meet or jump on a call with you. So what it sounds like is you might have seen some emails where people say, are you available Tuesday at 4 p.m. or Friday at 3 p.m.? So you're giving 2 options. That's the narrow. So people can immediately say, okay, yes, Friday, 3 p.m. works for me, right? So they can pick a time. And then the wide section, that's where you're acknowledging that you are a person who's reaching out to them. So they're in a position of high power. So you're acknowledging that, this person is making time for you. So you're saying, if neither of those times work, I'm also willing to work around your schedule, right? So it'll look like, hey, does Thursday 4 p.m. or Friday 3 p.m. work? If neither of those times work, I'm also happy to work around your schedule. Let me know when it works. So that's kind of the wide narrow technique. The question I often get when I talk about this is there are a lot of meeting scheduling tools out there right now, like Calendly and whatnot. You can use those tools if you want to, but you have to be very mindful of how you make the ask, because it can come across as a little condescending if you say, hey, here's my calendar, find a time. So I've seen people word it in ways where it's like, hey, since I'm the one asking for a favor, I'm happy to work around your schedule, but to make it easy to schedule time, here's my Calendly link. So you can word it something like that, right? So that's email number 1. Short and sweet. All you're trying to do is get the meeting or get them to say yes to something. Email number 2 is a friendly reminder. So you can send it, I'd say anywhere from 2 to 4 days after email number 1. And what you're trying to do in email number 2 is exactly like Will said, you're replying to the first email. You're not starting a new email. You are not changing your subject line. So you're just replying to the first email and you're just saying, hey, not sure if my first email got buried in your inbox, or not sure if you missed my first email. So that's how I typically like to follow up. It doesn't come across as being pushy this way, because you're not actually saying like, hey, how come you haven't replied? Or you're not just, sending them. Like I see some marketing emails where people just send me random stuff all the time. They're like, hey, check out this article and all of this kind of stuff. Then it becomes a bit spam, right? So all you're doing is you're repeating, and then maybe you might need to change the ask depending on the time. So if the time has already elapsed, then you might say, oh, you know what, does this time or this time work instead? So that's exactly what it is. You just say, hey, not sure if you missed my previous email, and then you repeat what you said before. So email number 3 is, if you're not hearing back after email number 2, you want to try a different channel. So this is where you can try, depending on what is appropriate, you could try LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter. You could even give them a call if you have their number. So you can try different things. And the idea is you call them and you say, hey, I'm following up on my email. I'm not sure if email is the best way to reach you, but I try reaching out to you on LinkedIn, for example. And you just repeat the same thing. You're not doing something else, right? So you're being consistent with your messaging. That way, it really doesn't come across as being pushy. You're just saying, hey, I'm not sure if email is the best way to reach you. Thought I'd try sending you a message on this channel. Make sense? So that's all you do with the third email. Again, you might have to change the ask because the time might have changed. And then in the fourth email, that's what we call the breakup email. So what you do with the breakup email is that you start by giving them what we call the guilty parachute. So in the guilty parachute, what you're doing is you want to make them feel a bit guilty, but you also want to give them an excuse because you don't want to make them feel too bad that they don't want to respond to you, right? So you might say something like, hey, I sent you 2 emails. Sorry to follow up again. I know you might have been busy because maybe you've been looking after your kid while working from home, for example, right? In this current situation. So you can change the context depending on what it is. You can say, oh, maybe it's spring break and maybe you've been away on holiday or something like that. So you give them an excuse, but you also want to make them feel a bit guilty. And then you just say that, hey, this is my last try. I'm not going to bother you again if you don't reply. And then you close with the ask. So that's all you do there. So that's kind of the last email. Any questions on this before we move on, or any comments? No? All good. So I think I have some examples you can take a look at. So knowing what we know, let's kind of take a look at this email. And I'll actually just kind of break down what I'm seeing over here. So this is an email I received some time ago. So hi, I'd like to do custom corporate socks for your company. They would make a great gift for your tier 1 clients, a great giveaway. Right, so obviously here, no personalization. So hi, who? They could very easily have figured out, someone at the company. Even if it's not me, then at least still personalize. The nice thing about it is, yes, they actually make a pretty good use of spacing. So there's a lot of white space, it's skimmable, scannable, but too many call to action. So check out our brand book here, check out our work here, here's my link. So too many different call to actions. Of course, this person is also not escalating. He's jumping right away to trying to make a sale. So he's actually listing pricing right off the bat. So, a bit too strong. Also, obviously, his email landed in my spam inbox because, it raised a lot of warning flags. So some things like having too many links, using all caps, talking about pricing right off the bat, no personalization. So there are different ways that you can customize your email to ensure it doesn't go in the spam. But these are some of the things that I see over here. Any other comments here, Will?
Yeah, with a lot of our outreach, we actually don't include any links on the first email. And link tracking will get you flagged as well. So we don't track links and we don't put any links in the first email. On the second and third, we'll have either an unsubscribe depending on the approach, but we almost won't have any link tracking if you're doing outbound. Other than that, yeah, a table is a big red flag. I don't think anyone's, probably get a 0.1% reply rate on including a table like that.
This is another example. So this one, slightly better. Obviously, the subject line actually prompted me to actually open it up. So discount perks for entrepreneurs of Spring, Vancouver. So it's personalized. Of course, the person could have gone one step further and just easily, looked at our website to see who works at Spring and dropped in the name there, but no name. So hello. Intro is, I like the spacing of the email. So his sentences are not too long, if you notice. So the lines don't run on. It doesn't, come as a block of text. So it's quite readable. I'm Daniel, CEO of Edit. I think we can reach an agreement with Spring Vancouver to offer Edit to your clients. We offer a discount. So he's actually very quickly jumping to pricing. And then if you notice over here, he's very quickly jumping to features as well. So 1 GB of space, thousands of designs, resize and designs with click. So what you see as a sales mistake is you typically want to try to sell people on the value, on the benefits, rather than focusing on the features. So this person is jumping, too quickly to the features. And then at the end, if you need more information or have any questions, we will discuss it with a problem. So no strong call to action. So slightly better without any links. So this actually did end up in my inbox. it wasn't flagged as spam. But weak call to action doesn't really prompt a response. Cool. Any comments here?
Yeah, shorter, and I go back and forth on this one, but the intro of who you are actually can come later. Often we lead with a hook. So either a question in the opener or some sort of, we call it a data-driven hook. So in the second line, I think we can reach an agreement with Spring Vancouver. So where they're talking about what they know about the prospect's business, that's what I'd almost lead with. And then I'd follow up the next piece because, and you can disagree with me on this and I might be off base, but I don't exactly care that you're the CEO of X, Y, and Z company. If I'm not in the market for an online graphic design editor, immediately the rest of the thing is a wash. Like I'm not going to read the rest of the email, but I am going to quickly, especially depending on the audience, I'm going to quickly scan the first 2 sentences and look for value. So exactly what you're saying.
Yeah, interesting. Excuse me. On the question piece, I won't say that I disagree with you, but you just have to be careful with how you use questions. Like I mentioned, the more you get someone to think to respond. So if you ask a big question, if you're asking something like, tell me about how you currently do graphic design, then usually you might not get a response. But if you're asking a simple yes/no question, then that's where you probably will actually get someone to engage with the email. Cool? So keep it short.
A yes/no or a simple question that gets them to rethink their business. Something like, well, actually, I have examples in this that are probably better than this. I don't want to add a bad example here. But yeah, like a challenger style sale question.
Yeah, cool, good point. So I'll go through a few other examples, and then I'll actually give you a good example. So another bad one here, obviously, no customization. So website development, high, obviously was flagged by my spam filters as well. Apologetic at the start. You don't want to open with an apologetic intro. That kind of makes people feel like, this person shouldn't be in my inbox to begin with. And then obviously feature dumping as well. So going through all the features of working with them. And then if you're interested, share your requirement. So that's a big ask, requirement. So that's asking me to really think about what my requirements are. So likely I'm not going to offer. But obviously, again, this is not something that I need right now. So he's not making this relevant for me, he or she. Another one, obviously flag as spam as well. This one is funny because there is some personalization, but sometimes some people, you have to be very careful if you do list building. So we'll talk about list building in a bit, but make sure you clean your lists before you send your emails, right? So you see over here, dear Changqing, no one addresses people by their full name with no spaces. So make sure you personalize and adjust the names, because sometimes when you scrape data and you build your list, it might dump the full name in there without spacing. It might dump sometimes their nickname or something else. So you just have to be careful with tidying it up. I think that's all I really want to point out over in this email. I'm not going to cover. Oh, actually, another one. This is actually a follow-up email. So good that they just replied to the previous email, but what was bad is the way that they followed up, right? Just want to check, have you checked my previous email? It's kind of like, hey, I haven't heard back from you kind of thing. So it feels a bit pushy, right? Cool. Another quick bad one. So same as well, the merge tag over here. And I'm actually kind of disappointed to see this because this is actually coming from the startup event database, so Startup Sesame. But same, my name came out like that, kind of weird. Too many links, too many call to actions, so a bit distracting. Yeah, nice thing over here is you see among us first speakers, we have confirmed the participation of Honda, Toyota, Siemens. So building some credibility over there, that kind of helps as well in certain cases, depending on what you're trying to accomplish. But I think for them, what they're trying to get me to do is, I think, apply for one of the competitions that they're having. So there's some credibility. It sounds like a big, and it actually sounds quite personal as an email. It's just that some minor tweaks would probably improve conversion rate over here. So I'm not going to go into that too much. But this is one of the campaigns that I personally did while I was working with Spring. So what I was doing is I was looking for companies that were raising capital from investors because we have a fundraising training program. So over here you can see, hey Janet, so it's personalized. Great to meet you. I hope you're doing well. You know, I can probably adjust that and tidy that up a bit. But if you notice the spacing with my emails, again, I don't have run-on sentences that look like a big block of text. I say I came across Team Job Find on Gus, and I believe we have aligned values. This is where I'm kind of giving that praise as well. So I was looking for companies that are social ventures that tend to be doing some sort of social good. So I'm saying we use business as a force for good. I love to hear more about the impact-driven venture. I'm not actually making this a question because, you know, I'm just trying to build some rapport over here, and I don't want them to actually go into the long intro. But that's, oh, excuse me, that's kind of where I try to do the light praise. And then I say we help mission-driven companies around the world that are raising seed capital. So I'm being specific with what we do and how we can help, especially if they're looking to get it from impact investors. So again, very specific call to action over here because I'm looking for impact-driven companies that are looking to raise money from impact investors. And this is my CTA. So call to action is I'm saying, was wondering, are you currently raising a round of funding or planning to in the next 6 months? That's all I'm asking. I'm not asking for a meeting. I'm not asking for them to click on any links. And then I just say Spring specializes in providing training, coaching, and mentorship for fundraising. Let me know if you're raising and we can dig deeper and see if we can collaborate. So that's it. And I think proof in the results, right? So I sent this out, and this is just one single campaign that I sent out. I probably sent out at least 12 or 13 of these. But in this one campaign, I sent to 59 emails. And you can see of the 59 emails, 47 of them actually open. So that's an 87% open rate. And 46 of the 47% actually replied to me. So it's fine even if they replied no, saying that, you know, we're not raising capital. But the idea is that allows me to quickly disqualify my leads as well, so I'm not wasting my time on people who are maybes, right? So you can see why the open rate's high, because I said, hey, found Team Job Find on Gus. So there again, there's customization in the subject line itself. And yeah, good response rates. So that I think that kind of speaks for itself. Did you hand build the lead database? So yeah, I'll talk about how we do list building in a second. But this tool that actually tracks the open rates and the response, I was sending it using this tool called Yet Another MailMerge, YAMM. It's a Google Sheet plugin that you can use that actually helps you send emails from your inbox. Quick word of caution about sending sales emails from your inbox. So the reason why I say it's very important to ensure that your sales emails don't end up spammy is because if you send out a lot of spammy sales emails from your own inbox rather than using a mail client like MailChimp or ActiveCampaign, is if people flag you as spam, it affects your domain, right? It's not going to affect like a secondary provider server that's sending on your behalf. It's actually affecting your domain. So every future email that comes up from your inbox or other emails for people who work at your company are all going to be affected, and they will all be triggered and flagged as spam. So you have to be careful about that. So just make sure that your emails are really personalized, that they're clean, that they're relevant. So you're not just sending email to someone saying, hey, I want to do web design for you, and they don't have a need for web design. Make sense? So just be careful about that. Cool. So list building, let's get to that. Sorry, Natalie, question here. What is the best way to create a perception of value in opener and email? Should we try to appeal to the senses and the human experience versus facts, or maybe tell a story, highlight what they stand to lose, or create some other kind of fear? Or great question. I think it really depends on how you want to escalate the conversation and what the immediate next step is. So usually in marketing emails, I tend to try to use a hook, like what Will is talking about, where it's like, hey, there's some piece of value that you want to open up this email for to get. In a sales email, I'm not usually using that sort of value-driven hook. I'm usually more on trying to get them to answer something, trying to get them to engage with me in some level. So that's the difference that I use, but I guess different people have different ways. Will, any comments on that?
Yeah, that's great. And I think it's very contextual to who you're reaching out to. So I think the fundamental piece is the hook, and usually around emotion or logic. Fear is a kind of a better driver than you know, a benefit or a gain, especially like if they're facing substantial legal risk or there's something they don't know about their business. Is usually kind of the quickest way to get a response. But then again, you don't want to be fear mongering all the time. But we always lead with emotion if we can.
Great, thanks guys.
Yeah. And a quick comment with the fear piece as well is fear is also more relatable, because typically it's easier to identify a problem that your customer has. But if you talk about benefits, everyone has different benefits. So a quick example over here is if I say, do you want to make more money? Money can mean different things to different people. It could mean financial freedom to one person. It could mean security for another person, for their family, right? So if you talk about benefits, it might not speak to the person depending on what their values are. But if they have a problem, they usually have a very clear fear or worry. So it's easier to just address that and be more relatable with the fear piece. Yeah. So quickly, I'll show you some list building techniques. This framework is actually quite easy. All you do is, it's 7 steps. You start with finding a list and building a list of companies. So there are different tools you can use to do that. And then once you have a list of companies, the next step is to find a decision maker. You just have to find the name of a person. So you can use the About Us page, the LinkedIn, and then you can use tools like Hunter.io. There's a few other ones like BERT. And what it does is it helps you try to guess their email. And then what you do is if you find that this process works and you're able to build a consistent amount of new emails per hour or per minute, you can start to farm this out to Upwork or some other freelancing organization to help get other people to help you build the list. And then, of course, once you have the list and you're ready to start sending, clean the list. Make sure that you're not sending to emails that don't exist anymore. And then make sure you tidy up the first names, the company names, things like that. And then you craft and review your copy, make sure it's not too spammy, and then you send the email using a MailMerge tool. I'll quickly walk you through all the steps. So actually maybe, Will, why don't you show your tool? Because I think it was quite interesting. I can actually make you a co-host and you can share your screen if you want to do that as well. Give me a second.
Yeah, sounds good. And while Chin's bringing me up to speed on this, sorry.
There you go.
Perfect. And I'm just gonna log in now. Actually, just a sec. I want to just change over the account first. Make sure there's no information that shouldn't be up. Perfect. Oh, I gotta log back out. Yeah, so we started Growth Genius as an agency about 4 years ago, and since then we've gone and built a kind of an all-in-one lead gen tool that automates a lot of what we did as an agency. So list building was the most frustrating part of the job, and so we figured out a way to scrape the web and build a database that's easily referenceable. So you can filter by title, location, company, employees, etc. And yeah, so that, you know, a lot of the process that Chin just went through, you know, figuring out how to clean the list, enrich the list, run it through a verifier. We wanted to make it as easy as possible. So I won't get into it too much now, but you know, if you're looking for a faster way, or you're kind of trying to do this at scale, would be happy to help after the session.
And this is scraping from LinkedIn, I see.
Yeah, and I can just look at, like, you know, founder or CEO in Canada, and we'll see how many pop up. Our Canadian contact set isn't as good as our US data set, but we should have, you know, enough coverage to kind of get a good campaign out there. Look at Vancouver and see what we have. Yeah, so and this is, you're right, you guessed it, from LinkedIn. So we're very lucky now that scraping LinkedIn is legal. So yeah, this is just an example of one of the tool sets out there. There's a couple database providers out there. There's ZoomInfo and there's Discover.org. But yeah, we do, you know, the list building and the email and LinkedIn automation all in one tool.
Amazing. That's really powerful.
Yeah.
Great. Thanks for sharing. So yeah, you can use a tool like Growth Genius to put something like that together. Another quick hack as well is if you search a specific title of what you think a document might be labeled as, and you put in CSV at the end of it. Usually a lot of people actually upload files online on their website or on Google Drive, and it's not secure, and you can probably pull up the file. So one example is, like I mentioned, because I was looking for impact-driven companies that might be raising capital, I imagine that using the B Corp list might be a possible way of doing that. Because B Corp companies are companies that are certified B Corps. They have some mandate where they're actually doing good with the business. So I just searched bcorp.csv, and lo and behold, I have a huge list. I think when I pulled out that list, I had close to over 5,000 emails. So once you have the list, you have the company name. That's all you really need at this point. You just need the company name. Of course, you can customize and filter depending on your needs. So for example, I could say, I could run different tests depending on company size. So maybe I'll send one campaign out to companies that have, let's say, 1 to 10 employees. I'll try another campaign with companies that have 25 to 50 employees, because I imagine that if they're at different stages, they might have different needs. Maybe they're more ready to raise capital from investors if they're a bit bigger, so on and so forth, right? So you build the list, and then the next step is you're trying to reach a decision maker. So you know the company that you want to reach out to now. The easiest way for most medium or small companies is to look on their website. Most medium to small companies actually have their whole team listed on their website, right? So just go to their About Us page or their team page, and you should probably be able to find usually at least the founder's name there. If you can't find them on the website, what you can do is you can go on LinkedIn, and if you search the company name and you pull up the company's LinkedIn page, you can see over here it says see all 11 employees on LinkedIn. So this actually works better for larger organizations. You can click and then you can see all the employees that work over there. And then let's say, for example, if you say, okay, I want to reach out to, let's say, sales executive at Bark Media. That one, there's no name there. But let's say I want to reach out to a founding partner, then I could easily go after Jim, Jessica, or Jennifer, right? So I know potential names, so that's where you can start. The question I get here sometimes is, should I send to multiple people at the organization, or should I only focus on one? You can send to multiple people at the same organization, but you have to be quite careful about how you do that. Because the smaller the organization and the more pushy your email, the more likely they will tell each other about, hey, did you see this person's email? So if it comes across too strong, then sometimes it might raise some flags. But if it's generic enough, usually I think it's quite safe to send to multiple people at the same time. Any comments there, Will?
Just a +1 on the pushiness. I think it's tempting to. This is a game of patience now. Probably 10 years ago, cold email or cold outbound wasn't as popular, so you could be a little bit more salesy and still get quite good response rates. And probably not do yourself some kind of brand damage or anything like this, but. More and more we're seeing it's a game of patience and relationship building. So you're really not trying to close the deal in the first email. Be okay with your second or third or fourth email, getting more assertive, but at the same time, the goal is not to be as assertive as possible and get the close, because often these sales emails will lead to them signing up on the website or coming in through a lead magnet. So, this is just another tool in the arsenal.
So now technically the company name, the person's name, and then the next step is to try to guess the email. So Hunter.io is one such tool. So for example, you can actually go on their website, and then you can just put in the company's website. So let's say spring.is, and you can actually see that it will actually tell you what the person's email is. What you're seeing over here is this is a paid account, so you can actually see the person's full email. If you don't have a paid account, it actually blanks out the email. It just shows you like what the email might be. But what's most important over here is they show you the pattern. So you can see the common pattern over here is just first name at spring.is. So sometimes it's like initial first name, so they show like F and then last name at spring.is. Then you can try to guess from there. It's not going to be 100% accurate, which is why you need to clean your list before you actually send. You can actually validate to see if those emails actually exist. But that actually is a good starting point for you to try to guess who you can try to reach out to. Cool. It actually does the same thing. It scrapes, it actually goes on the web and tries to find where the email is publicly listed. So you can actually click on the sources and it can actually show you where the email is listed as well. So now you know the email, you're starting to build your own list. So this is where you have your own list. It can be a CSV file, a Google Sheet, whatever it is. But what you do is you want at least one column with the first name, email. So I normally like to separate first name and last name just because you don't want to send the email where it comes across as like, hey, Sam Wilson. It's a bit too formal, right? So first name, last name, email. Title, if you're customizing the email, you might say like, hey, I see that you're the CTO of this company. If you want to have the level of personalization, you can include that. Website, I leave this in here because when I do my list building and I outsource it to someone else to do it, then I need them to copy the website and paste it into hunter.io. That's why I have that column over there. Company name, I have that there as well because in my merge tag, sometimes I would say, hey, I found this company through this website, right? And then these are just other extra fields if you need to filter based on that. So you don't have to if you want to. So usually it's the first name, email, maybe the title, and the company name. What you want to do with emails is sometimes you want to even edit the first names yourself. So for example, if someone's saying, if their name is Michael, for example, if they might be commonly referred to as Mike, you might just replace their Michael name and say, hey, Mike. Maybe that's a more personal way of approaching them. I find that works better in North America. It might be different in other countries depending on cultural norms, depending on formalities that the level of formality that's required. But normally in North America, people prefer to be as informal as possible, is what I find. Comments, Abel?
Completely agree. The more casual, the better, unless you're going after execs of mid-market or enterprise companies. So usually, I know unfortunately, it's just kind of a rule of thumb, a generality, but you have to kind of take the context of your market into consideration. But we find more casual and short nicknames work really well.
I want you to pay attention to the company name. There's actually two columns I have over here. So one is pre-cleaning and one is after cleaning. So you can see the one on the right side here, like August Public Incorporated. Sometimes when you build your list and it actually scrapes their full formal company name. So like a political group, right? So in certain cases, when you're actually messaging them, and if you're referencing the company name, you might actually leave out some of those addendums, right? You might say, hey, I found a political through this website, or I found August Public through this website. You're not going to say August Public Incorporated. So there are tools that can help you quickly remove those substrings or pre-strings as well. So one tool that I use is called Power Tools. It's a Google Sheet add-on, and it will allow you to, let's say, remove like INC from the end of any list, or you can remove like LTD or LLC. So you can say what you want to remove, or you can even say like, I want to remove the first 5 characters of a word, or I want to capitalize the first word of every sentence, and things like that as well. So help you just clean up your list a bit more quickly. So now that you have that process down, you can see like so far it is a fairly manual process, but it's fairly brain dead as well. Like anyone can do it. It doesn't take a lot of smarts to actually build a list. What you do then is if you know that you can repeatedly get a certain level of certain number of leads per hour, for example, then you can start to outsource this work. Because this work, it's usually work that's going to take up a lot of your time. You don't really need to do all of that. So I like to use Upwork myself. And what I do is when I use Upwork, I find that with freelancers, the more specific you are, usually the better the experience you get. Depends on the level as well. There are certain freelancers and they're usually the more expensive ones. They can perform tasks with better critical thinking, so to speak. But usually the more instructions you provide them, the better the expectation that you'll have coming out of the project. So you actually tell them like, this is the list of websites. I want you to do exactly this process and just build the list for me. And what I will do is I'll also A/B test my freelancers. So I might give the same project to 5 different freelancers. Of course, they're not building the exact same list. Maybe I'll get them to build 5 different lists. And then I'll see how many companies or how many emails they can build for the list for each of them. So I know like, okay, this person's more effective with list building. I'm going to continue with this guy, right? Or that person. So that's the automation piece. And then once you have the big list, okay, let's say you have 200, 300 emails now and you're ready to start sending. First thing is dedupe your emails. Make sure you're not actually accidentally sending one email to, maybe 2 or 3 emails to one single person because you have the emails multiple times. So dedupe your list. Verify the emails with an email checker. So the one I use is Bulk Email Checker. There are a bunch of other ones out there. Usually you have to pay a bit for these kind of tools. I think it's very much worth it. It will scrape and make sure that all the emails that you're sending is not expired emails, people who have left the organization, or it's just emails that have, maybe typos in them, right? You check your first names and then you tidy up the company names. And then once you have all of that done, you should be ready to send. So Power Tools is the one that I was talking about. You can remove leading and trailing spaces. You can remove spaces between words. You can remove all spaces. You can remove all, so you can basically set whatever you want to set. That's Email Checker I talked about. So you can see over here, it actually shows you this email address does not exist. So you'll actually test to see if the email is a valid email. And then this other one, I haven't actually found this too useful, but I think on a high level, if you're sending a lot of more marketing-centric campaigns, I think this is a bit more helpful. You can actually send your email to this thing called Mail Tester, and it will actually scan your email and look for different flag triggers, I guess, for if the email is going to be going to spam box. So if your inbox is not authenticated, if the body of your message contains errors, if there are blacklists that you're on, things like that, it'll actually go into an analysis of your email for you. This is more on the copy side of things. And then once you're ready, then you can start to send. So that's where I actually go back to the email then. And like I mentioned, I like to try to send my emails as personalized emails. And then this is where I put in the mail tags, the merge tags. So merge tagging, different tools use different formats. So normally you want to try to send yourself a test email first to make sure that the merge tags are working correctly. You don't want to get people to actually get this in the inbox, right? It looks really bad if that lands in the inbox. So like this one, you will actually replace all the first names with the person's name in my spreadsheet, and it'll just send it out for me. So then I do the mail merge. This is yet another mail merge that I talked about. So you select the email from your draft, and you just send it out to the old list, and it will track open rates, response rates, things like that. So that's one quick example. So to quickly sum it up, sales emails, if your intention is to reach out to warm prospects that you're ready to convert, try to send from your inbox if possible. Mail merge, so that's a tool to kind of use it. Make sure you're escalating conversation, not jumping to the sale right away, and try to be as human as possible. Maybe I'll transition to Will.
Yeah, that was great. And I tried to avoid, talking to the same points. So I focused on a lot of the strategy side of things. Would you guys want to take like a 2-minute break? I'm just going to go to the washroom, and maybe we can kind of get back, because standing for or listening for an hour and a half is pretty tough. I'll be back in 2 minutes.
Great. While we are waiting, feel free to connect. If you want to post your LinkedIn in the chat, we can connect with each other. I'll take mine up as well. The new world of networking now. It's nice that Will is forcing me to take a short break as well. I tend to run fairly long if I have a lot of content in my email sometimes, and I know it can be a bit overwhelming too.
It's quite hard to find the balance, right, Tim?
Yeah, I just feel like so much to talk about sometimes.
Yeah. We need to find the right balance for online activities. Yeah. A new word.
Perfect. So
I'll let you share your screen so you can change the slides yourself.
Oh, perfect. Okay. And just to stay on time, I'll probably go through it at a quick clip, and then we can always circle back to maybe kind of specific topics, because I think we're supposed to end this section at, was it 7:20? Or
7:20, 7:30. I think 7:30 is a hot stop.
Okay.
But if we run a bit over, I think if the content's good, everyone's willing to stay. So.
Well, I'll keep it short, and then maybe if we want to revisit some of the topics, we can and dig in. This way, at least you have the context and you'll have the slides, so you can use this to build your own outbound campaigns. So yeah, just why should you even listen to me? What are the outbound economics? What happens if it works? What are the revenue numbers and appointment numbers look like? How outbound a campaign from start to end should work? What are the fundamentals? Just things that you got to think, keep in the back of your mind as you're building the campaign. When building out your market or thinking about your market, how do you build an ideal customer profile? And then once you have your market, what should you really be thinking about at a high level? And this is a repeat of a lot of what Jim mentioned. What should you have in your message? And then how do you optimize these campaigns? What are the most common objections and how do you overcome them? How do you make sure that these emails actually hit the inbox and get delivered? I think deliverability is probably your biggest enemy there. Even before getting your message and market right, it's a little bit boring, so I leave it to the end, and then analyzing results. So once you start to see some results, how do you make sure that you kind of see improvement over time? So I'll go quick. So we started Growth Genius out of a personal pain point. I used to run a web development boot camp in Toronto, and what kept me up at night was kind of figuring out a repeatable way to get new customers. I had terrible insomnia because I couldn't solve this problem, so I've dedicated the good part of the last 5 years to solving this problem for myself and other folks. And so we probably send a couple 100,000 emails a month, do a couple thousand leads per month, have generated for our clients tens of millions of dollars. Not overstating it, I wish, these seem a little outlandish, but when you get things to work, outbound's kind of the dirty little secret of the startup world. So we've written hundreds of campaigns and it works for just about anybody, but you do have to really dial in on the pain points and benefits of your solution relative to your market. So those are the folks on the left that we work with, and those are the folks on the right that we book meetings with. So I keep going at a good clip, but you can kind of think of, so the left side are, what are your inputs? And then on the right side, what are the outputs? What are the most common outputs? And let's just focus on the outputs given time. If you think of the results on a bell curve, this is what you would see probably 60 to 80% of the time. We have had campaigns do, probably 300 replies in 4 months. So we've had probably double this once in a while. But the whole point of going through, quite a tedious or often frustrating process is when you do get it to work, it really works out. These are some of the expectations. Don't get into this. If this is gonna be one of the breadwinner channels of your company, make sure that there's at least an audience of 5,000 folks or more. It helps when your deal size is 5,000 or more, or else the unit economics start to break down. Your close rate is way different than inbound. So it's an inbound close rate could be anywhere from 20 to 50%. Your outbound close rate is probably 5 to 20% of replies. Your sales cycle is a little longer, so you need to be able to invest the time, money, and resources to seeing that this is a long-term success. and you probably won't see your first deal close. It could be as early as month 2, but typically we see kind of months 4 to 6. Just put time savings down as, you know, if you're running some of these all-in-one tools, you got to think about how much time you're spending cleaning these lists, deduping, verifying contacts, enriching, things like this. So any questions or thoughts on that one? There's a lot of information there.
A quick comment I'll make here is the assumption over here is that the market that you're reaching out to is a completely cold market. So you're not normally qualifying your leads in this outbound process, are you?
Yeah, that's a really good point. That's a really good point. This is pure cold. So yeah, the numbers look maybe a little bit more grim than they would otherwise.
Question from Ritesh. Can you talk about 5 to 10 hours? I'm not sure what he's referring to. Can you go back to the slide?
Yeah. So
up there, yeah, 5 to 10 hours.
Yeah, that's a good point. So after you get it up and running, the hardest part is getting the run rate campaign to work, and that might actually take the good part of, let's say, 2 to 3 weeks. Someone full-time, so that might be 120 hours. But once you get this thing running, you shouldn't be spending more than 5 to 10 hours a month.
So that's the tweaking of copy, adjusting things. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. There's no set it and forget it. I think one of the things that was kind of interesting is that you're almost in the fast fashion business, like Zara. You have to always kind of keep tweaking things because things go stale quite quickly. Yeah. So a product that represents these economics. So we have marketing agencies, often professional services. I went with a deal size of 5K. Most deal sizes are actually between 10 and 40K. So the math looks a lot better than this. And so legal services, financial services like alternative lending, VCs, basically everyone uses outbound, especially when your deal size is between 5 and 50K. But happy to kind of reference a lot of examples at the end as well. So at a very high level, sometimes it helps to zoom out. So you really want to look at so thinking about campaign DNA, you want to really look at your market, your product, your competitive set, and what's resonated before, or what can you steal or borrow to de-risk the campaign. And then so you set kind of a structure. This is the campaign DNA is just bullet points on all of the things we just mentioned. On the lookalike lists, so number 2, it depends on the team size. If it's a small team, it's obvious because you're having conversations with clients. But if you're a little larger or you have more transactional business, it's important to look at who you're actually having success with instead of the conjecture around who you feel like you're having success with. So you build a list based on who's in your CRM. On the messaging side, we'll talk about the importance of split testing, and Chin talked about how many times you follow up. We actually follow up anywhere from 3 to 8 times, depending on the sequence. And then the last piece, the 5 to 10 hours of optimizing per month. So this isn't a set it and forget it kind of thing. And this is simple and obvious, but sometimes you need to mention that the simple and obvious things, you're really tweaking 3 variables: your customers, your message, and the right time. So the time of day matters. But sometimes you can build these lists off of certain events like funding, or you can figure out if they've moved or recently signed up for a database or posted a job. So timing is quite important as well. And then you just optimize over time to get the desired effect.
Quick comment on the timing piece as well. So especially if you're running some sort of campaign where you have a CRM and you're actually maybe even doing some inbound marketing as well, what you want to try to do is you want to try to identify what we call marketing qualified leads or sales qualified leads, so MQL or SQLs. So you can actually set up certain triggers to actually say like, oh, this person visited my pricing page, or this person has attended 3 or more of my webinars. So you can set those kind of triggers to happen. And then once you know that they've actually done some of those actions, then they're probably more qualified, and then you can start to send them something.
That's huge. That's huge. Visiting the site or opening an email. Sometimes you can send it another email based on an open or multiple opens because you know that they're interested. Is there an ideal time to send a sales or marketing email? Depends on your market. Typically, we send message or emails between 7 and 9 a.m. In your prospect's time zone, or between 1 and 3, with the exception of execs. Execs actually check their email on off work hour time. That's when you get some of the best response rates because they're not being bombarded by their team often. So sometimes Sunday nights for execs is great, or sometimes after 7 p.m. And how can you tell if an email has been read? Most all email automation tools should have reporting that tells you when emails have been read. And we could talk about HubSpot or something at the end because I think that's big. Oh, perfect. So thinking about, and I'll speed up a little bit, but thinking about your ideal customer profile or your ICP, important to test a couple. I think a lot of folks see initial success and they double down prematurely on a local optimization instead of a global optimization. So a good way to think about this is, so let's take these markets. Banking we think is our best bet. Retail is our second best bet. We might allocate 80% of our outbound to banking and 20% to retail. Or some split like that, where it's kind of like most of your email is going to your best guess, but you should always be testing new markets because you might find that that's where you really get a lot of your revenue. Our case was initially we thought sales leaders were the folks to go after with something like this, but it's actually the folks who kind of felt the business economics or the math. So it was founders and chief operating officers, kind of the C-suite team. On the messaging side, so when you've picked who you're going to go after, and I know Chin actually talked about this at length, so I'll go through pretty quick. This is a Facebook ad agency, and this is actually outreach that we did. We broke the cardinal rule of length. It shouldn't be any longer than maybe 200 words. So this email is longer than your typical email, but it told a good enough story that we decided to go with it. And I'll just talk about some of the tricks that drove performance or replies. So spending about $2.5 million a month on digital ads, we were actually able to find that through SimilarWeb. So they gave ad spend. So it actually showed that our client looked into their prospect's business. a limited presence on Facebook. I think that was extra fluff. I don't think you actually needed to do that. But that was just another kind of proof point that we'd looked into the business. Big brands like Bank of America, you're referencing competitors, really impactful if they understand or are thinking about that person's strategy, or if it's a referenceable customer. And then the yellow highlight is it's the whole point of the email. It's getting a better CPA. And when we're reaching out to heads of marketing at Bank of America, it's all about the CPA. And then again, referencing customers that they may understand or be familiar with. And then we actually left the CTA purposely vague. Sometimes that works because you're trying to, just like the subject line, you're trying to invoke curiosity. And you're trying to make it a riskless value proposition. So I've got ideas to improve your business. It won't take very much time. You just got to hear me out for 20 minutes. Yeah, I think that's enough said on that one. Chin, any thoughts on that?
No, I actually really like it. So if you're able to get fairly accurate with the amount of ad spend that they've been doing, that will actually perk up the interest, because they're like, oh, how does this guy know so much about what we are doing, right? So it's quite relevant. You're highlighting that, hey, other companies, they get better. So this is what Will was talking about in the challenger sales. You're actually showing them that, hey, we know better than you do in your industry. Like, we actually see that other companies in your industry, your competitors, are actually finding that this is effective and you are not doing this yet, right? So you're challenging them. Good credibility. Yeah, I think really good email.
The one thing is it's long. If there was a way to cut it in half, I would highly recommend that. We had a lot of debate internally about this one. Here's another example. Again, it's on the long side, but that's what our copy team was going with. They like to tell a bit of a story. And as long as you're able to tell a story well, I still think these are long, but I'll explain some of the logic here. So the first part, you're talking about, you see how the subject line 1 is quite vague. It's interesting to kind of see that curiosity is what drives opens. Curiosity and personalization, no more than 5 words is kind of a good rule of thumb. Given that your natural role description at Company Natural, so this is talking about their situation, that you are relating to their situation, and that you thought deeply about their business. So it's always about them first is kind of what we recommend and have found that works. And then we come around with an intro. And as you can see, the bold, to help Company Natural build brand awareness, have a clear value statement that person would actually care about. In this case, head of marketing, brand manager, this person is going to care about brand awareness. And then in the third paragraph, referencing customers that they would recognize, just to build credibility, and it almost invokes kind of FOMO, where they feel like they're going to be left behind if they don't act. And it's a kind of a short ask, and we threw in building a custom lookbook. So you want to, if possible, customize a call to action where there's really high value for them, and it seems like it's a very tailored experience. You're going to go out of your way to help with almost no expectation of anything in return. Oh, way over on time. Okay, I'm gonna get to the end really quick. I'm just gonna breeze through these. So anywhere between 4 to 8 emails. Always split testing 2 campaigns because you're looking for outliers on what's successful. More and more we're seeing that outbound is a volume game. So don't worry about getting it, pitch perfect. You can always reach out to folks every 6 months. They'll generally forget who you are.
A quick question on speed testing. To be statistically significant, do you need a certain volume?
Yes, there's a lot of talk around statistically significant, and it held up the team for many months. But what we found is anywhere on 200 to 400 contacts, you split tested, 50-50, you can get a good understanding of outliers. There will be an email in your campaign that gets 2 to 5x the response rates of the rest of the emails. And you really don't know which one is going to outperform until you run a bunch of things. So it's not statistically significant, but you'll get kind of directionally there quickly.
Yeah, no worries. I think I bring that up just to kind of emphasize you don't need to have a huge volume. Sometimes some of the patterns can actually emerge quite quickly as well. And what I find is don't overthink it as well. Optimize on the high level first. If you have poor open rates, optimize on the subject line first. And then once you get good open rates, then you can optimize on the copy.
Exactly. Here are the most, I'm not going to actually talk to this because I think they're quite obvious here. The most obvious are the most common objections we've seen, and they're almost always unspoken or unsaid. You'll just notice them in a lack of replies. And here's how to overcome those objections for each one, but you can look in the slides at the end. I just want to be cognizant of time. If any of you have come across Robert Cialdini's influence, he is a professor of psychology at I think at the University of Arizona, and he wrote this book, Influence, and here's an acronym to remember what drives response rates or sales or conversion rates the most. And we can talk through them after if folks are interested in the Q&A. On the deliverability side of things, I'm just jumping back and forth on Natalie leaving, but I'll wrap up quickly. Best practices are, if not a MailChimp or HubSpot server, start a new domain, create a new domain that's like your current domain, and warm that up. Regardless of who you use, start slow and ramp up over time. So no more than 10 emails per hour or 100 per day initially, and you can kind of ramp that up over time. Always ensure that some of your outbound are getting replies. So we often send these emails to a list that we can then go and reply to make sure that Gmail is seeing that there's some amount of replies, signifying that these are good quality emails and that people actually want to be reached out in this way. On the technical checks, I would just do a quick Google for SPF, DKIM, and DMARC. These are settings on your hosting provider, your email provider, to make sure that you're in good standing with the deliverability authorities, that being Gmail or some of these kind of spam lists. A quick Google and it'll tell you how to kind of run these things. Lastly, I think the most important thing from this slide is to optimize. So initially you have to look at top of funnel data, but more often than not, you want to, after 2 months of running this thing, you want to optimize around bottom of funnel data. So you might get a lot of noise somewhere, but that's maybe where only 20% of your revenue is coming from, but 80% of the replies are coming from. You actually want to look at, where's the most revenue coming from, but maybe not the most replies. So only time will tell. The other really interesting thing that we found are that most of our meetings actually came from neutral responses, replies. So you don't have to worry about getting a positive reply right off the bat. You just have to know how to maneuver the conversation post-reply, and just be able to kind of nurture that relationship. Don't worry about it being overtly positive right off the bat. So 80% of our meetings came from neutral replies. I think that's it. That's it. I just want to go get to the Q&A because I think we're way over time here.
No worries. Sorry about making you rush through it, because I think I went a bit over time on my end. So your stuff was good stuff, so I don't think you should skim too much over it, like Ritesh said.
No worries. Thanks for having me, and hopefully we can answer some questions if there are any. Should I stop sharing my screen? Should I flip to slides? Can I give you control again?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and if anyone has questions, feel free to come off mute and just shout out your question if that's quicker than typing. While we're waiting for some questions, some quick points I want to touch on as well. So Will was talking about overcoming objections. The quick trick over there is if you can actually address some of these objections before they even come up, then it usually increases your quality of your campaign. If you're actually saying in the email, like, hey, we know that a lot of people tend to be concerned about pricing, and then you kind of position that way, then usually, it's not going to be something that people don't reply to your email about.
Yeah. Totally.
Some questions coming in. Let me pull up my chat. So you can, there. No questions, thanks for sharing. Posting recording, yes, definitely posting the recording. So I'll send an email for instructions on how to access the recording after and the slides. So maybe I'll wrap up on some quick call to actions if there are no other questions in the moment. But yeah, if there are.
One question.
Yeah.
So if you were to move down the dollar amount for the engagement, how would the strategy change? I know it's a very open-ended question, so I don't want to hit you with a bizarre, like a very wide question. So if you can answer it at some level, like how did that change moving down the engagement value or the lifetime customer value?
And then the deal size one. Right.
Yeah. So a more transactional sale versus a relationship sale.
Right.
Yeah, you might not be focused. So the prospect would have to part ways with less money.
Yes.
So you might not be as focused with trying to build that relationship. So you might focus more of the benefits or the value props on being quick, easy, painless, and riskless. So mitigating risk over and performance of whatever the service or product is. So I would just focus more on mitigating risk often, and that could be in a time commitment as well. Chin, do you have thoughts on that one?
Yeah, totally agree. I think the rule of thumb is usually if your product size or whatever your offering is, if it's usually over $300, usually to convert someone, you need at least one touch point where it's in person. So maybe it's an in-person, like a call or a meeting or a demo or something like that. If your products are valued less than 300, you can probably solve it fairly transactionally. Like, let's say you have a physical product that you're selling, you can probably just show them a video of the product or direct them to the product page. And then if that's the case, then exactly like Will mentioned, it's about de-risking it so that they're comfortable with making a purchase. Yeah, it really depends on how you convert your customers.
Thank you, guys. And Will, if you can talk about Growth Genius and what you guys offer, that would be cool also, I think.
Yeah, so I didn't want to make it too much about that, but we're really focusing on the product these days. So what does that mean? you can build lists, you can run all of your outbound, automatically. You don't have to worry about enriching, deduping, and verifying emails. And you can I can send the sign up link at the end of this, but basically you can automate all of your sales team's email and LinkedIn automation. And we do that for ourselves, and we book, it's probably between 50 and 100 meetings a month, just with email and LinkedIn automation. Oh, I also have sample campaigns. I find the copywriting part, incredibly difficult. So I need inspiration. So I'll put the link in here. Sign up. It's free to sign up. Sample campaigns. After you sign up, you can navigate to campaigns, and then sample campaigns. And there's 45 sample campaigns if you're looking for some of the better outbound we've seen.
Cool. I'll send it out in the post webinar email as well. Paste that link there so I don't forget about it. Let me see. Top 3 to 5 most important must-have for top successful email efforts, such as value-driven, raise curiosity, being creative. I find that you don't actually need to be that creative when it comes to campaigns. Usually, curiosity is I find the strongest in terms of getting people to engage. And then value-driven, it depends on how you're flowing the conversation. So one practice that they talk about in copywriting is gradualization. So like I mentioned, you're slowly escalating the conversation. What you want to try to do is you need to first realize what the customers or what the prospect, or maybe whoever you're trying to reach out to, let's say investor or whatnot, but you need to realize what they need to realize in order to move to the next step. So as an easy exercise, you can just go down and say, okay, if a customer needs to buy my product or service, what are the series of realizations they need to go through? Probably the usual flow is they need to realize they have a problem. They need to realize that there's a better way of doing it. They need to realize that your method will work. They need to realize that the risks are reduced. They need to realize that it's worth the money. And then finally, they usually need to realize that they need this now. So there's some urgency around that as well. So usually that's kind of the raw flow for it. But if you kind of have that, then it really depends on where you're hitting them. So you might be reaching out in your campaign. You might be reaching out at the point where they are still consuming content, still trying to learn about, let's say, is this method the right method for me? Then in that case, you need to have more value-driven input in your messaging. If they're already at a stage where they're ready to purchase, they already understand that this method works, and they just want to qualify and de-risk, then in that case, you focus less on value, you focus more on de-risking the opportunity. Yeah.
Very well said. Very well said.
Cool. So I think some people are jumping off. I just want to wrap up. So we do have a few more workshops coming up if you're interested in this type of talks. May 27th, so next week, we're talking about storytelling. June 3rd, we're talking about imposter syndrome. I might actually change this June 3rd workshop because a friend of mine is actually doing this exact same talk a week before. So I might just actually get everyone to go for her talk instead. June 9th is pitching for hackathons. It's more around if you're joining some sort of startup competition and you want to design short pitches. June 11th, we're talking about finding co-founders. And like I mentioned at the start of the webinar, I donate whatever proceeds that are given to me. Half of it goes towards Universal Outreach Foundation. So if you enjoyed the webinar, it's free. Definitely appreciate if you guys are willing to pay whatever you think it's worth. And part of it will go towards the foundation. Otherwise, what I'll do as a follow-up is I will send some of the resources that we'll share it. And I'll also upload the recording to YouTube. So just send me an email, and then I can send you the slides and the link to the recording. That's it. Otherwise, I think Will and I can hang around for a bit if there are more questions, but if you have to leave, feel free to jump off.
Yeah, thanks for having us, and this was good. I learned a lot. Chin taught me everything I know about early stage startups about 4 years ago, so yeah, thank you. It's always fun.
Thanks for joining us, Will. You definitely have a lot that you shared as well.
Yeah.
Great. Yeah. So Will, so maybe send me a message separately outside of the chat if you have other links that you want me to share, other like templates, tools, call to actions for growth genius, things like that. Just feel free to share that.
Yeah, I've got a couple that help with deliverability. Yeah, that's perfect.
So you can actually send emails through Growth Genius. That's
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah. Email.
So it's like a mail. It's like a MailChimp / send plus. Okay.
Yeah, it's like a database plus a MailChimp, but it's all for just outbound.
Beautiful. Okay. Yeah, I see. Yeah, I worked in that space before, and you can get one or the other.
Yeah, yeah. This is because we're a little bit lazy. We're programmers by, I kind of identify with programmers, and I just wanted an all-in-one tool. So.
Yeah, yeah. Well, best products come out of laziness, right? If you find something extremely tedious, and you're like, I hate this. I want to automate it, and then it becomes a product.
That's exactly it. Yeah, and we use Clearbit under the hood, so that's how we keep everything up to date and verified and enriched. And then we use Zero Bounce and Hunter to check that they're valid emails.
Beautiful.
So it's a lot of the tools that Chin actually talked about under the hood, just abstracted away.
Ling is asking what top selling tools besides emails in the 21st century. So what I found, and Willie can chime in as well, I find that actually emails are underrated. So emails are actually very, very effective. The reason why a lot of people don't see them as kind of the trendy tools of the 21st century, I guess, is you don't realize, but emails are the next best thing to a phone number. Because most people, once they send an email, they don't usually change the emails. So it's really good and really reliable for you to actually have someone's email address if you can capture it. Of course, if you need a phone number, even better. But phone number is a bit harder for you to do cold outreach through phone numbers and cold calling. On social selling, it really depends on your product or service. Social selling, I find, is usually more effective for most of those transactional emails. Lower value products, more physical products, and then relationship building. If you do it through social, what I find is the most effective way is usually community building. So instead of focusing on like just selling upfront, you're actually focused more on supporting people with a cause. You're helping people understand how to change behavior, how to learn something new, and then through that you're building yourself as a brand leader or thought expert. And then from there you can build that relationship and then convert them usually through some other medium. Maybe it's through an email, through a phone call after that.
Yeah. And on that point, on the community side of things, it seems like, I don't know if you find this as well, but video, every time we post a video, or I guess in this case, a webinar is probably, much more effective. I actually think the next level or evolution of outbound is including videos in, the second, third, or fourth email. I think Vidyard does it pretty well. So if you really get to know or, get a feel for that person's personality and things like this.
Yeah. An example of video and emails that I found quite interesting is that a friend, he runs his data analytics company. So he helps people actually look at their apps and their website and optimize on conversion. So one of the things that he would do to get new clients in his prospecting emails is he would actually do a screen recording of him going through the client's website and actually providing some feedback and suggestions. And he would send that out in the outbound email and say, hey, I took a look at your website. Here are some suggestions. And because people see a video screenshot of their own website in the email, they're like, oh, this guy actually looked at my website. Maybe I want to click in and see what he's talking about.
Yeah, screen recordings are huge.
Ling had a follow-up question. Do I need to build celebrity status? I don't think you need to, right? Like, I don't think I'm a super expert in my field, but I'm still able to convert my own customers as well. So you don't really need to be a real celebrity. Andrej, any questions on, any advice on how to check if an email address contact is valid, where to search for it? if you contact a company, for example, you don't know anyone specifically, and you don't want to send an email to info at how to get a relevant contact email address, what sources and database free and paid. We kind of touched on that through the examples, but I'll actually do a live demo just to kind of show you how you can use some of those. So let's say, for example, trying to reach, let's say, Hootsuite, for example. Hootsuite, fairly big company. Of course, normally some companies do a pretty good job hiding their emails, but usually most companies, you can probably find some channel in some way. So let's say, just for example's sake, I'm looking to reach out to Maria, mobile designer at Hootsuite. So I know Hootsuite's website. I can dump it in a tool like hunter.io. And hopefully, I should be able to find an email. So a pattern over here is first.last. So it's probably going to be maria.sminovar@hootsuite.com. So that's how I get that email, as opposed to the info@hootsuite.com email. Of course, that might not be 100% accurate. So that's where then I would test that email through, let's say, bulk email checker or some other tool. And let me actually try it right now. So check the spelling over here. He's spelling. Oh God. I think I got it right. So I put in the email here, and it actually tells me if it's verifiable or not. Check that out. So again, in some cases, some companies actually mask their website. So you can't know if it's actually a valid email or not, but in most cases you can. So sometimes I get this, event, they're using a MX server that's a catch-all, so I can't actually verify if it's actually a valid email or not. So in that case, it's a bit trickier. I don't know if you have any comments on that, Ro.
Sorry, I was actually just looking at the last comment around press release. What was the question?
When you use an email verifier and it says that the email is the catch-all or the domain, yeah.
Yeah, it's that one's a little tough.
What can I?
Yeah,
I can answer. What happens is when you send an email, if the address doesn't exist, they will bounce it for you. So Google does that. Gmail does that. Companies have figured out that people use it to probe. So any email that comes in for which they don't have an email address, they'll swallow it. That's mean by catch-all. They just like hoover it up.
Oh yeah, sorry. What does it mean? What does catch-all mean? That's exactly it. But it might not be delivered to anyone. It might actually just forward it.
It goes into a black hole and delete it.
Yeah.
Fine. I've always wondered about that. Yeah, no easy way to verify those emails then. Best way to get media attention through emails. I think did you respond to that, Will?
I was actually just looking for, I think there's a PR journalist list or a service that's specifically for that kind of thing. I think it's in Product Hunt, and I was just looking for it. Yeah, Hello Press.
Oh, something else. I think I know which one you're talking about. I'm not sure if I have the right one.
If I can find it.
I don't remember. I know which one you're talking about, but that helps you find the right editors to reach out to. So it gives you the email contacts of different editors that have the emails public. To get media attention, that is a bit trickier. So to kind of borrow from some knowledge that I have from Kathleen, who runs Switchbot PR here in Vancouver. It's a media company. What you need to do is you need to, first off, same thing like with media and PR, you need to build a relationship with them. They won't just simply write about you just because you say, hey, I have something cool. Your news outlet needs to be story worthy as well. So you want to make sure that you do all the work for them, you make it as easy for them to publish as possible. So you want to have it in the format that is that they're familiar with. So you have a formal press release, you have the right formatting, you actually have a good catchy title, it's relevant, there's some interesting story behind it. So it's not just like, hey, we're launching a new product, right? I'm really touching very lightly on it. It's quite a deep topic there.
Yeah, it's tough. It's very tough. If you find the articles that they've written before, and you can frame it in a similar vein and understand their personality, I don't think you can do the mass outreach. But like Jen is saying, if you understand the person and what they're looking for, you can craft a bit of a story so that they don't have to think as much.
What's the name of it? This is a great blog, Publicize. They have a lot of blogs on press-related best practices. I don't remember, I can't seem to remember as well the one where they give you the emails. Yeah, I'll look it up and try to send it after. Right. Otherwise, I think we can call it a night. Again, feel free to connect with Will or myself on LinkedIn. Will, are you open to that? I can post your LinkedIn.
Yeah, for sure.
Great. Yeah, and if you have more questions, feel free to reach out to either of us. We are probably happy to answer it as best as we can.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah.
Have a good rest of the week, and we'll follow up. I'll follow up with Jin with some resources and things. Anything I can think of that might be helpful, especially the sales tools.
Great. Thanks for joining us. Have a good night.
Yeah, this is awesome. Thank you so much.
Great.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, guys. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks for joining us.